The problem in front of you may be the reason you are not moving forward. Or it may be the raw material you need to move forward in a better way. That sounds like a motivational line, but Ryan Holiday's "The obstacle is the way" is more demanding than motivation. It asks what you will do with the facts you cannot change, the emotions you cannot afford to obey, and the next action that is still available. The book draws on Stoic philosophy, especially Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca, and connects their ideas to people such as Demosthenes, Ulysses S. Grant, Thomas Edison, Amelia Earhart, and Abraham Lincoln. Holiday's structure is simple: perception, action, and will. First, see the obstacle clearly. Then act with creativity and persistence. Finally, accept reality without surrendering your responsibility within it. That framework is powerful, but it is easy to misuse. It does not mean every bad event is secretly good. It does not mean a person can overcome poverty, discrimination, illness, or abuse through attitude. Let's start with perception, because most obstacles become heavier inside the mind before we ever touch them in the world. We hear one criticism and turn it into a judgment about our entire character. We miss one opportunity and decide our career is over. A project runs late, and we treat the delay as proof that we are incompetent. The event is one thing. The story we attach to it is another. Stoicism begins by separating the two. What actually happened? What am I adding? Which part is under my control? Which part is not? These are not questions designed to make you emotionally numb. They are designed to prevent your first interpretation from becoming your final decision. Imagine you send an important proposal and receive no reply. The facts are simple. The proposal was sent, and no reply has arrived. Your mind may add, "They hated it. They are ignoring me. I have ruined the relationship," or "someone else got the opportunity." Those stories create fear before you have information. A disciplined perception does not pretend the silence feels fine. It simply refuses to confuse anxiety with evidence. Marcus Aurelius understood that an event can be painful without being a final verdict. A delay is not necessarily rejection. A mistake is not necessarily an identity. A closed door may still be a useful fact. Once we stop demanding that reality match our preferred script, we can see options that frustration was hiding. This is why the book is not asking you to become positive. Positive thinking often tries to replace an unpleasant interpretation with a pleasant one. Holiday is asking for something sturdier, accurate thinking. Maybe the situation is bad. Maybe it is unfair. Maybe you have lost something important. Start there. Clear perception does not decorate the obstacle. It measures it. The Zen story at the heart of the book captures the idea. A king places a large boulder in the middle of a road and watches as people complain, blame others, or walk away. Eventually, one person moves the boulder and discovers a reward underneath it. The lesson is not that every obstacle contains a hidden prize. The lesson is that the obstacle creates a task, and the task may reveal strength, ingenuity, or information that comfort would never have required. Now, we should be careful with that story. Real obstacles do not always come with a reward. Some are devastating. Some should be removed by collective action, not treated as private character tests. The useful question is narrower. Given that this obstacle exists, what does it require me to learn or do next? Perception also includes controlling your emotions. That does not mean suppressing emotion. It means refusing to let the first wave of anger, fear, or humiliation choose your strategy. When you are insulted, you may feel an immediate need to respond. When a plan collapses, you may want to declare that nothing matters. When a rival succeeds, you may waste your energy proving they do not deserve it. The Stoic move is to create a pause. Breathe. Name the reaction. Then ask what response would serve the goal. The pause may last 5 seconds. It may prevent 5 months of consequences. Emotional control is not the absence of feeling. It is the ability to keep feeling from becoming the only source of information. Holiday illustrates this with people who were placed in situations that demanded unusual composure. Rockefeller faced public hostility and financial crises. Abraham Lincoln faced a divided country, military failure, and enormous political pressure. Their value as examples is not that they were never afraid. It is that they learned to make decisions while fear, uncertainty, and criticism were present. That brings us to action. A clear perception is useful only if it changes what you do. Many people understand their problem perfectly and still remain stuck. They can explain the history, list the reasons, identify the unfairness, and describe what should happen next. Months later, nothing has moved. Holliday's answer is deliberately direct. Act. Not recklessly, and not all at once. Take the next concrete step that converts the obstacle into information or progress. Demosthenes gives the book one of its strongest examples. As a child in Athens, he inherited money, but guardians mismanaged and stole much of it. He also had physical and vocal difficulties that made public speaking difficult. He could have treated those facts as a final sentence. Instead, he turned the legal problem into a reason to study law and the speaking problem into a training program. He practiced breathing, delivery, and endurance. He spoke over the noise of the sea. He put pebbles in his mouth to strengthen his pronunciation. The methods sound extreme, but the principle is ordinary. The weakness became the curriculum. Every attempt exposed another detail to improve. Demosthenes eventually pursued the people who had taken his inheritance, and in the process became an extraordinary orator. The money mattered, but the abilities he built through the obstacle became more valuable than the original fortune. That is the kind of reversal Holliday means. The problem did not disappear. It forced the creation of a capability that would not have existed otherwise. Action also means using constraints rather than waiting for ideal conditions. Amelia Earhart was offered the chance to make a transatlantic flight, but the arrangement was unequal. Men would fly the plane, receive more money, and act as chaperones. Earhart would be expected to accept the danger without the same control or reward. She still used the opportunity to establish herself in a field that did not welcome women. The point is not that we should accept every unfair deal. Sometimes the correct action is to refuse, negotiate, organize, or expose the unfairness. The point is to see the difference between a constraint that can be changed and a constraint that must be worked around. Strategy begins when we stop asking whether the situation is ideal and start asking what leverage is actually available. One of the book's most useful action principles is to focus on the process. Coach Nick Saban's teams use the phrase, the process, to redirect attention from the entire season to the next practice, assignment, or play. This is psychologically important because a huge goal can paralyze us. We imagine the final result and become overwhelmed by the distance between here and there. The process breaks the distance into a sequence. Write the first page. Make the call. Test the smallest version. Repair the specific mistake. Finish today's section. The action may feel too small to solve the whole problem, but a large obstacle is usually removed through repeated contact, not one dramatic push. This is also where persistence enters. Ulysses S. Grant spent months trying to break the Confederate defenses at Vicksburg. Direct attacks failed. A canal project failed. Flooding and movement plans failed. Instead of interpreting each failure as a verdict, Grant treated the failures as information about which options were exhausted. Eventually, he adopted a riskier strategy that cut his army loose from traditional supply lines and forced the campaign into a new pattern. Persistence did not mean repeating the same action forever. It meant remaining committed to the objective while changing the method. That distinction is crucial. Stubbornness repeats a tactic because changing it feels like admitting defeat. Persistence protects the goal while allowing the route to change. You can abandon a plan without abandoning the mission. Thomas Edison's experiments with light bulb filaments make the same point. The familiar lesson is that he tried thousands of materials. The more useful lesson is that each test narrowed the problem. Failure was not proof that the project was impossible. It was data about what did not work under those conditions. Modern product development often uses a related idea. Build a small version, release it, observe what fails, and improve. This does not make failure painless. It makes failure informative. If you protect an idea from all criticism until launch, you may discover too late that you protected a fantasy. Small tests can turn embarrassment into tuition. But feedback only helps when you use it. Repeating a failed action without learning is not persistence. It is ritual. After a setback, ask 3 questions. What happened? What did I assume? What will I change in the next attempt? The third question is where the obstacle begins to teach you. Action also requires flexibility. Samuel Zema wanted to connect rail lines across a river, but political corruption made a conventional bridge impossible. He did not spend all his energy proving that the bridge should be allowed. His engineers built piers and a temporary structure that achieved the practical purpose while avoiding the official definition of a bridge. This is a good example of working with the shape of reality. Sometimes the obstacle is a rule, a budget, a competitor, or a physical limit. You may not be able to remove it directly, but you may be able to change the question. If the goal is connection, do you need a bridge in the traditional sense? If the goal is communication, do you need the original platform? If the goal is income, do you need the original business model? The third discipline is will. Perception tells you what is happening. Action tells you what you can do. Will determines whether you can remain steady when the result is slow, unfair, or incomplete. Holiday connects this to a more fatty, a phrase meaning love of fate. It does not require you to enjoy every event. It means meeting reality without wasting energy wishing that the past were different. You can hate what happened and still accept that it happened. Acceptance is the beginning of strategy because you cannot change an event you are still arguing with internally. This does not mean passivity. A person who accepts illness can still seek treatment. A person who accepts a failed exam can still change their study method. A person who accepts a betrayal can still set a boundary. Acceptance removes the fantasy that denial will reverse the past. It gives your energy back to the present. Will also means understanding what you are willing to endure for a meaningful goal. If your purpose depends on everything going smoothly, the first serious obstacle will end it. A useful commitment is not, I will succeed quickly. It is, I will continue to learn, adjust, and act as long as this goal remains worth serving. That is why persistence is not a personality trait. It is partly a design problem. Reduce distractions. Create a schedule. Define what counts as today's work. Make the next step visible. Put feedback close to the action. A person does not need to feel heroic to continue. They need a system that makes continuation easier than avoidance. The book's historical examples are energizing, but they also create one of its limitations. We hear mostly about people who overcame obstacles and became famous. We hear less about the people who tried just as hard and did not receive the same result. This is survivorship bias. Success stories can teach tactics, but they cannot prove that the tactic caused success or that every obstacle can be conquered. Some obstacles are not individual puzzles. Poverty, racism, disability, war, abusive relationships, exploitative work, and illness may require collective support, policy change, professional care, or escape. Telling someone to transform every barrier into an opportunity can become a way of blaming them for a system they did not create. The Stoic idea of control helps here if we use it precisely. Control does not mean you control your outcome. You often do not. It means you can control the quality of your judgment, the honesty of your effort, the boundaries you set, and the next action you choose. Even those forms of control can be limited by health, safety, trauma, and power. The framework is a tool, not a moral test. So how do we use the obstacle is the way in ordinary life? First, write the obstacle as a fact rather than a dramatic conclusion. My application was rejected is a fact. I will never succeed is a prediction. Keep them separate. Second, divide the situation into what you can influence and what you cannot. You may not control a hiring decision, but you can improve the portfolio, ask for feedback, and apply elsewhere. You may not control a diagnosis, but you can seek qualified care, ask questions, and decide who supports you. Third, identify the smallest action that creates information. Send the email. Make the call. Run the test. Ask the person who knows. A step that teaches you something is progress even before it produces the final result. Fourth, prepare to revise the route. Persistence means staying loyal to the mission, not to the first plan. If one door is closed, do not automatically call the whole building inaccessible. Look for the side entrance, a different skill, an ally, or a new definition of the goal. Finally, decide what kind of person you want to be while the result remains uncertain. Patient, honest, resourceful, fair, courageous. The obstacle may determine what happens next, but it does not have to determine the qualities you practice while getting there. The central message of Ryan Holiday's book is not that obstacles are pleasant. It is that obstacles are unavoidable, and our unused capacity often becomes visible only when comfort is removed. Perception can turn panic into information. Action can turn information into movement. Will can turn movement into endurance. The obstacle is not always the way. Sometimes it is a warning to stop, leave, seek help, or demand change? What obstacle is in front of you right now? And what is the smallest action that would turn it into information or progress? Share your answer in the comments, and tell OneBook which book you would like us to explore next.